Beseder. So we were up to Laban, and he explained that Laban was Laban Elyon. Right? He's the higher Golgotha, we said. So let's read it again. Zeu shekatuv. So it's right after the Suglaim, parentheses in the middle of the page. Zeu shekatuv. This is what it says. That what Yaakov wanted to do was he wanted to work for 7 years for Rachel. Why? Because Rachel, he thought it was worthy of working 7 years to get the midos that come out through the speech, the lower midos, the midos of Zah, what he's connected to.
Why can't he do that after he's married?
Because he has to get it out of Laban. Why? Because it says, Ki Lavan ubchinat Lavan ha'elyon makor chasadim. Because Lavan is the source of everything. So this brings us, we started talking about it yesterday, but it brings us into a very interesting reading of what Lavan is. What exactly is Lavan? And what does he symbolize? So he said he symbolizes the Golgotha, which is white, which is the highest part of the Keter. And really, it's even explained that it's even higher than that. Lavan Elyon is like saying that he's like the source of all the lights, like Paro that we talked about yesterday. And we see that the very fact that Yaakov is willing to work for him says that you need to be working for that higher source. And again, his figure in the Torah is very strange. It's not clear exactly what he is. On the one hand, he's a scoundrel, and he seems to be a cheater. On the other hand, and this is the big deal to understand, and maybe this is the hardest thing in serving Hashem, is that from time to time there's different ratzon, there's different cheshbon above. And the question is, can you take it and understand that it's Hashem like shining in the world in a different way, illuminating the world in a different way? Where did this come about? It came about very strongly when Yaakov was working for him later. And then he says, "V'avichem echlif maskulti aseret monim." And it's usually understood that it means he changed my rewards benefit package 10 times. So the person who, if he's working for a company and they do that to him, so the third time he'll say goodbye, I can't deal with this. But the truth is that all of us in the world, that's how we live. We're living with a boss who changes the rules once in a while. It seems like suddenly it's a different benefits package. It doesn't mean that it's not necessarily negative. It could be that it's even in your favor. And he even expects you to, not to cheat him, but he expects you to go along with it and trust him that this is better. It's better than the old one. You move from package to package all the time. So the Midler Rebbe says 10 munim is not 10 times, but rather it's how many different ways can you put 10 together, right? 1 plus 1 plus 1, that's the easiest one, that's 10. Right? And then you have 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. How many altogether? So it's interesting, it doesn't say how many there is, but there's something called, something in mathematics, I can't remember what it's called. It's called combination theory. It's not combinatorics, it's something a little bit different. And in the end, it turns out you can do it in 42 different ways. So it's like a remez, it's one of the remazim for the connection between Shem Membet and the number 10. So that really when we say Shem Membet, one of the things you can have in mind is that these are all the different possibilities of Hashem bringing things down into the world. It's like, basically what you would say is, this is how you can divide the Sfirot. In how many different ways can you divide 10 Sfirot? So in Hashem, all these different ways they exist. And so sometimes all the Moichin are together, so it's 3 and 7. Sometimes it's 6 and 4, sometimes it's 5 and 5. But then there's all these other separations, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so on. There's altogether 42 of these, if I remember correctly. So these are all the ways in which Hashem deals with the world, and that Lavan represents. And Yaakov, who's willing to go along with it, is willing to work with him, so that's how he brings down all the worlds. He says, right, well, how did it all work? It was all based on akudim, nekudim, and vudim, all based on the types of animals that the benefits package was based on what types of animals were being born. So the Arizal comes from this, and he understands that in principle, there are three different worlds. They're called akudim, nekudim, vudim. Akudim is the first world. Nekudim is the world of Tohu, the one that shatters in the end. And Vudim is the world of Tikkun. And you have to be willing to work with Laban, meaning the Laban Elyon, with this highest supernal realm of Hashem, and know that it changes from time to time. But don't be thrown off by the fact that it changes, because you're only building a world from it. Okay? So Yaakov's initial thought was very simple. He just said, all I want to do, I just came for Rachel. All I want from you the midos of speech. It's sort of like the Yaakov's in the initial state of a person who says, what do I need in the world? The person says to himself, I need a good mouth. I need to be able to express emotions in a way that will convince people to do business with me, to like me, to this and that. I need to be able to speak. To sweet talk people if you want, but in the end, that's the real power of communication. And he misses the point. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying. He's missing the point. That's why he hates Leah in the beginning. That the world of thought is higher than that. That it's actually more important to be able to get to the midos of the world of thought than to the midos of the world of speech. And we'll see some more about this later.
I was thinking about this last night, but which world? Was he thinking that perhaps this Malchus that Rachel represents is of this world, and the Leah represents even the Keter, but of the world below, and therefore this...
Leah is higher than him. He can't see her. He
No,
doesn't see the value.
In which structure?
The simple structure. Leah is thought, and he's in speech. He's like in Malchus, she's in Bina, she's in Ima. And he doesn't see the source of the midos being from Ima. He doesn't think... I'll say it this way. This is like it's how regular Chassidus thinks, not Chabad. In regular Chassidus, the thought is, if you give me emotions, if you give me love and fear of God, so I'll daven. But that's like Yaakov's initial thought, that all I need in order to be a good Yid is Hashem, just give me Avat Hashem and Yirat Hashem, just give me my wings, give me my love and fear of God. But, and that's how the Rambam starts. How does he start his book? He says, first of all, to believe that Hashem is one, and then to have love and fear of God. Those are the first three mitzvahs that he discusses. Meaning that it's only important, but then he right away says, but how do you come to love and fear of God? You have to think about nature. He immediately says there's a prerequisite, if you really want it to stick, there's a prerequisite to loving and fearing God, which if you don't have, love and fear will dissipate. They won't stick to you. So the initial thought that Yaakov has is exactly like that. First of all I need is the love and fear, the midos. These are the 7 years that he wants to work. He wants from Chesed all the way down to Malchus. And then I'll be able to express myself properly. I'll be able to act properly. And like we saw here, the Rachel is also the actions in Eretz Yisrael. What he said, that in this generation, because Rachel is not in Eretz Yisrael, so it's very hard to remain from in Eretz Yisrael. It's much easier to be from in Chutz La'aretz than it is here. You're also on Facebook? No? So if that's what you think initially, that all I need to do is just to have good feeling about Hashem. That's a good yid, like a good Yiddish heart. But then he comes and he sees, Laban says to him, and Laban here is the Laban Elyon, the source of everything. He says to him, it doesn't work that way. If you want me to give you Rachel, and I do want to give you Rachel, it's not that I don't want to give you, but I want it to stick. I want it to work. And the only way that it will work and remain consistent, meaning that your emotions will remain consistent, for your connection to me, to Hashem, will remain consistent, is if you first take Leah. And what does that mean? That you first have to think. Even though you, Yaakov, in the initial thinking, like the L'chatchila, you thought is fleeting. And there's an initial feeling that thoughts are, that's how it's explained here, is like something that's not permanent. Why? Because the thought is constantly on the move. In the East, they say that the thought is like a monkey on a leash. Even if you put it on a leash, it jumps all over the place. That's how thought is. It's rimata machshava. It's always moving. Why? Because it's the levush for chokhmah and bina, and because chokhmah and bina are always coupling, they're always in yichud. So thought is always being filled with their progeny all the time. You can't. It's like overflowing at every moment. So the thought, which is just a levush, is constantly being bombarded by everything that's coming from your chokhmah and bina all the time. But speech, or the midos of the heart, why don't you feel something all the time? You can stop also feeling and so on. You can stop talking. It's because it's coming from the Zayin Malchut, or Yaakov and Rachel, which is a Yichud Liprakim, it's called. There's only sometimes they couple, only in certain times. So it seems at first that it's more stable, it's more established. To work with your mouth, to work with actions, these are things that are permanent. And to work with thought, who needs it? It's just a waste of time, because at this moment you have that, then it seems like you're catching thought, like it's a person turning on and off the TV and just catching pieces of what the show is about. And it doesn't even look like a show. It doesn't even look like it has a theme. It's just everywhere.
Frames.
Yeah, it's just frames out of the whole movie. And it's not really a movie that has a plot, it looks like it's just everywhere. So he says. How does that fit in? That's what they feel.
But they see the
that's
world
what
in
they feel.
frames.
Maybe that's exactly what they have, that they don't have,
Continuity.
I used to say that the ADHD is because we stopped giving children punishments to copy something 100 times. Because you have to reel in, you have to quiet your thought, you have to learn how to reel it in. And so when you don't give busy work, you don't learn how to reel it in. All the time everything has to be meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So not everything can be meaningful. You have to have periods, but it's a theory. I don't know if it's true or not. So I don't know for sure what to tell you. Okay, so he wanted to work for 7 years to get the midos that come out in speech or in action. And they seem to him to be the main point, right? And that's also when you think Rahmana Libabai. What does it mean, the Rahmana Libabai? Hashem wants the heart. So if he wants a heart, all I need is Rachel. I'm willing to work for you for 7 years. Give me the midos of the heart. Give me Rachel. But he tells him, no. If you really want to be successful in your heart endeavors, in your service of Hashem, it has to be based on Leah. You have to first take Leah. And for Leah, he really worked. And it's very interesting that he never worked for Rachel for 7 years.
Got it for free.
Because he got her after he finished 7 days of the Sheva Brachos, he immediately married Rachel. And then he told him, and he worked for 7, but he didn't. It wasn't that he worked for 7 years, then he got Rachel. So the Middle Rebbe says this is an interesting idea, that when you have the mind worked out properly, you have the midos in the mind worked out, meaning you learn the sugya of the midos the way it is in the Torah, then when you come to actually work with your heart, it'll be in place already very quickly. You won't have to go through you don't have to go through a translation process even. It's very, very quickly it shows up. It's like in days. It's not in years like it was working on the mind. So what he's saying here is that this is a symbol for how much you have to invest first in the mind in order to be able then to use the heart properly, to use your feelings properly. So you're saying?
So there's actually two conversations going on at the same time. One where Laban is being Laban, the rogue,
Yeah, of course.
and the other conversation is really Hashem speaking to Yaakov.
Good. And he captured this, he understands this. And Laban's a complex character. Somebody once said, I didn't like it too much, but it has some merit to it. Shmaryahu. From here. Learner. So he said once, Esav was a very nice guy until he met Chazal. That in the Torah, it doesn't say anything about him doing anything terrible except for his wives. There's one thing that it tells us. And then he wanted to kill Yaakov, so that's not so good, but he never did. Instead, he has feelings. He's very emotional, and he's a hot-headed guy.
He came back from
But he's not a terrible guy.
He came back from a murder when he sold his.
No, but that's Chazal. That's Chazal.
Okay, right.
We don't know. The Torah never says anything like that. So, the reason I say it has merit is not because Chazal are wrong, but because not because Chazal defamed him or something. He obviously earned it, but rather that there's a simple idea that's brought in the Ramban already, that the Torah doesn't make judgment calls. It doesn't want to teach you. It doesn't say this person is evil and this person is good. It doesn't do that at all. It wants you to make your own judgment. Because really what's the Torah trying to do? It's trying to teach you that about every situation in the world, it's up to you to decide how you want to interpret it. So, obviously there's the party line, what everybody believes, but it doesn't mean that you can't find merit in the other side. Because if you can't, because I'll do it even worse, again, all the Gemara is, even if you feel that one side is right in any machlokas, that one side is right, the other side is wrong, but you have to learn both of them. They bring both of them in the Gemara. They don't bring just one side. It's just the fact that they bring both is because that's how the intellect has to work. You have to be able to weigh both sides. So Laban, he's a very complex character. He never does anything wrong. We never see him actually doing something wrong. We hear from Yaakov that he's a ramai, that he's a cheater. But again, the cheating here could be, as it's explained, that it's really he's changing, he's switching it up to keep Yaakov on his feet. Like, okay, so let's see if you can handle this. Like any good father-in-law would do to his son-in-law. You want my business? Okay, let's see. I'm going to switch it up today, and then see how you deal with it this way and how you deal with it that way. It's not necessarily because he's an evil character in the Torah. So in the Torah, it's very open to interpretation that Laban is Lavan Elyon, that he is the Lavan Elyon. Okay.
Same thing as Laban, he told Pharaoh to kill all the Jewish children.
Again, that's not in the Torah.
But hang on, so the Torah says that the Noach was a tzaddik.
Yeah.
So it made a judgment call.
Again, in a few places it does. But then out of all the people, it doesn't. He's one of the people who sounds not so good. In any case, so it very seldom does, put it that way. כי לבן הוא בחינת לובן העליון, מקור החסידים שכולו רחמים פשוטים, דלית שמאל הבית עיקרה כשלמטה נשפל בלבן גשמי. And down below he becomes Lavan, like we said, maybe the character himself, like Chazal say, he's a very negative character. But in the Torah is far above that, in the sense that it's like saying that Chazal want to help you understand how to make the judgment properly, how to judge things properly, how to weigh them properly. ומכל מקום כתיב כולו הפך לבן טהור ואפילו הנגע. He says even below, when it becomes is going to turn out today. וינשק לבניו ובנותיו שנמשך בכל פרצופי האצילות זכרים ונקבות. There are 12 children, and there are altogether 12 partzufim. So he says that the fact that he kissed them all was like that he himself is who's brought into all the partzufim, all the worlds. ואחר כך ולבן שב למקומו למעלה מעלה ויעקב הלך לדרכו. Oh, so now it's a very interesting thing that they put in the end, they have a barrier between them. Okay? You can't live with Laban all the time. That's one of the takeaways from the Parsha. You can't be there all the time. It's going to be switched up today. You have to, in the end, work below. And there's another reason for it, because when it's switched up, when he changes his maskoret, when he changes how he's working with you, so apart from the fact that, again, say it another way, that what he's saying here is that if you dedicate yourself to bringing this chesed down into the world, this affluence down into the world, so in a certain sense Hashem puts a barrier between you and the Laban, and you don't have to worry all the time about it being switched. It switches from time to time, but it's not every single day. It's not like it was with Yaakov. Meaning you get periods, long periods, and maybe even your entire life, where you can just work. Or, in any case, you have to ignore the switches. And you say, from now on, even if Hashem switches it, to a certain extent, I don't care. I'm working along the program, the plan that I have put in place when I was 25. This is what I'm going to do, and so on. Some people, it's probably the thing that is hardest in life, but is to keep routine and to keep patterns going and habits going. Good habits, the good things that you do, and those things not to give up, even though it might be shifting above, but you have to continue with your tasks. So Rachel was sterile at first. She couldn't give birth. ואי אפשר להיות הגילוי וגילוי בביאה אשר הנבראים הם נפרדים, אפשר להתגלות להם בבחינת לבן העליון הנ"ל. So that's why Rachel, when he eventually did marry her, she couldn't give birth, because they were still too close to Laban, as it were. Okay? So she was able to get one child out, but it's very hard, because that's what he's trying to say. You have to get some distance from Laban to really be able to function in the world. You can't live with that knowledge that everything can be shifting at every moment. You can't live that way. In a certain sense, people who don't marry, that's how they live. They're constantly in the world. It's shifting. It's very unstable. Every morning you wake up, you could be doing something else. So either you have work or you have a family. You have both. You have to have stability in order to do something in the world. And if you stay too close to love, it becomes sterile. You become sterile. There's no ability to actually function. ומה שכתוב לעיל, דרכי נקרא על מדי יתגלה, במקום כל להיות הגילוי על דרך בחינת לידה, הוא קשה ביותר. So here we have a long, well, not that long, but long. This is a short one. Sorry, it's not the long one. Okay, so this is the first one, which is not so long. The next one, I think, is very long. How does it work? The next one is no. There's one that's really long here. Where is it?
The next one.
No, it's the one. It's in the next. It's the next column. Almost the entire next column is a note. So let's see this note. Let's see if I remember what it says. מה שכתוב לעיל דרכי נקרא עלמא דתגל במקום כל להיות הגילוי על דרך בחינת לידה הוא קשה ביותר. יש חילוק גדול בין שערי השפעות לבחינת לידה שהוא גילוי עליון יותר והאמת שכתוב בזוהר ועכשיו פנחס. Okay, so he wants to say that there's Gilu and there's Leida. Even though Rachel is the world of revelation, you could say that it's like Reb Nachman used to say that the world says, meaning the people say, you don't get pregnant from stories. Okay. It's a famous saying. People say that. Okay? Stories don't make you pregnant. Like if somebody's pregnant or something, it tells us. Talking about somebody specifically. Talking about that religion that they tell you.
Yes.
You don't get pregnant from stories. Don't tell me stories.
Conception.
Again, you get pregnant because you were with somebody. So he said, because he's a tikkun of that. All Chassidus, we talked about this. Chassidus, in many ways, a tikkun of that religion, is trying to rectify all the things that they misunderstood and perverted. So he said, but from my stories you can get pregnant. And he didn't mean that you can get physically pregnant. He meant that your mind will get pregnant from my stories. So to give birth is very different, meaning to get pregnant is very different. It's a whole different level of being affected, of being able to reveal something than just to reveal something in the mind. To reveal the mind, even Reb Nachman's stories can give birth in the mind. But to actually give birth, you can't from stories. It doesn't work that way. It's something much, much more real. So in that respect, and because it leaves a permanent impression in the world, and it's a person that you're bringing into the world, so in that respect, so even though Rachel herself is Almadid Galia, it's the power of revelation, still to be able to give birth is a much higher level of revelation. So that you couldn't do. This is what, and he quotes, and he cites the Zohar here. I don't remember what the Zohar says there, but I imagine that he talks about the difference between speech and between birth.
You mentioned yesterday that.
Just what I'm saying. Potent speech is close to being like insemination. Meaning when a person is able to speak in such a way that it enters, that's what Reb Nachman meant, that it goes into a person's mind and gives birth there. Today that's called memes. I mean, memes today, because of your favorite website, is not, memes today mean like this little picture that has some writing on it. But the original term from the 80s was, instead of genes, that they were looking for a word that would be like a gene in physicality for the mind. And there's a woman who, I don't remember her name, who suggested this word meme. And the meme was, it's supposed to act like Richard Dawkins' genes, that they try to survive, and so they pass, ideas pass from one person to the other, and they inseminate us. Like they make us pregnant with this idea. So a powerful idea, when it's spoken, then it's like, it's explained like it's like insemination. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go on.
Okay. אבל לאה, שהיא המחשבה, ילדה 6 בנים. שהם הספירות שבאצילות עצמו, ששם היה שורש השבטים, ולכן נקרא שבטי איכה. יהודה הפעם מודה בחינת ביטול, והודעה הרי הוא נמשך ומסתעף מן המחשבה דווקא. But when it comes to the mind, and this is how you might say that this is the benefit that thought has over speech, that for somebody to give birth from their thoughts to a feeling is far easier. That it's almost instantaneous, but it's easier in the sense that it really, you have a benefit if you want to affect your heart, if you want to fix your heart. So the path of going through thinking, even though it takes a long time to understand the concepts, but once you understand them, it's quick to the heart. It gives birth right away. That's why Leah was easy to give birth, because her children represent the birth of the 7 midos from the mind, not from the heart. And they're not and it's much easier there. So the whole idea of the Tanya that we should go derech al-bukashi k'tzara. So this explains why it's a short path in the end, even though it takes a long time of preparation, 7 years. You have to work Laban just to get Leah in there. You don't even know. The major thing, he doesn't write it here, but in another mimer he does, that Yaakov didn't even know he was working for Leah. He thought he was working for Rachel. So you're thinking, I'm going to become this holy person with a shtreimel, and they send you to learn all these books. And they say, what does all these books have to do with being a holy person? Like, a holy person, you're supposed to do holy things. So no. I said this, you don't even know what you're doing. You're not even completely aware. So even though he wasn't aware, it's a derech aruka shiktzara. It's a long path. It took 7 years, but then when you finally married, when Torah and Chochmah become your partner, so then it's very easy to give birth to the midos, and that's why Leah has an easy time giving birth to all her children.
So I remembered yesterday you mentioned that Leah was like, Rachel was like the spiritual mother of Yehuda.
Right.
Was that because she had a physical inability to give birth for the 3rd time?
So it would have been the first time.
Oh.
Would have been the first time, yes. So it's the same thing, but it would have been the first time, not the 3rd. וגם לוי שהוא בחינת התקשרות. So now he goes over each one of these children. Leah's 6 children. She had 6 children. So how each one of them is really out of the mind, is like the midah, the way it comes out of the mind. So Levi שהוא בחינת התקשרות, כמו שכתב פעם ילווה, נמשך מאוד גם כן מנחשה, כנראה בחוש, במי שהוא בעל מחשבה, שאינו מרגיש כלל בעסקים החולפים לפניו, מחמת גול התקשרות שיש לו במחשבה. Says Levi, who's like accompanying, says as he represents the power of thought to be cut off or not to pay attention to anything around him. There's a beautiful example of this that I just happened to learn not long ago in Shulchan Aruch, that what happens if somebody comes behind you and suddenly screams in your ear and you jump up and you break something because you're startled.
Who's responsible?
So does he have to pay damages? So the Torah says no. You don't have to pay damages. Why? Because they say, it's like they're saying, that's how it's explained by the Netivot and others there. It's in Choshen Mishpat. I can't remember the simon right now. So it says because it's your problem that you're startled. If you were doing what you were supposed to be doing, meaning your das was miyushav alecha, like you were a concentrated type of person, you're able to concentrate on what you're doing, you wouldn't have jumped up. It's an incredible thing. It's saying it's up to you to come to the place where your mind is concentrated enough on what you're doing that even if somebody startles you, you don't startle. So it's not his problem, it's yours. Which is not the same if he hits you. If he hits you, it's because now he actually is a gamma. He's the cause itself. But if he just makes a sound and he startles you, so it's not you're to blame, not him. So this is like Levi. This the power of the mind to remain focused. That's what Levi represents. Okay. כמו שכתוב במדרש, בעובדא דרבי חייא רבא. So I don't know what he's talking here about the Medrash, but here it probably says. So at home I only have the old version. I couldn't even find a new version, so I can't even find all the footnotes. So where does it say this? So they don't know also. They also couldn't figure out what he's talking about. Okay, got it. In any case, so there's a story, I guess, in the Medrash about Reb Chia Rabbah who didn't hear what people were saying around him. A good example is also Reb Zusha. Reb Zusha, whenever he learned, so he didn't hear anything of what was going on around him. So the one time that they were praising Zusha next to him, he was sitting mamish next to him and praising him. He didn't hear a single word. And the Maggid said, you have to learn in such a way that you don't hear what's going on around you. And he says here, bring Zusha. So Zusha, they called Zusha. He says, Zusha, what did they just say about you? So you didn't know. You had no idea that they were even speaking about him. So that's how you learn. And you sort of learn how to do this in a base medrash, where it's very noisy and everything. Then you learn how to focus on your own thoughts, not to be distracted by anything around you. פרק אמר רבי עקיבא, so this is in Shabbos, another story like this. ולכן יצא ממנו משה שהיה כבד פה וכבד לשון. So because of this, Levi gave birth to Moshe. Moshe is one of his descendants, who was hard of speech. דהיינו שלגודל התקשרותו בבחינת ביטול ונחנו מה, לא היה יכול להיות משפיע שהוא בחינת הדיבור. So he's so much engrossed in his thought that it's also hard for him to even speak, because that's how thought is. ועיקר ההפרש בין התקשרות הלוי שהוא בחינת ביטול ובין הודיה דיהודה שהוא גם כן בחינת ביטול. So now he's getting into a little bit of a side point here. But there's Yehuda and Levi both seem to be bittul. Yehuda is bittul in the sense that he admits to Hashem, and Levi because he's not distracted. So they're both bittul. So he says the difference is Yehuda הוא בחינת הביטול בגילוי, כעניין מודים שקורא ומשתחווה. And here he connects it to Rachel. He says that Yehuda, his nullification to Hashem expresses itself in action. So it's not like Levi. Because for instance, it says, when do we show our bittul to Hashem? When do we show our nullification before Hashem? When we bow down in Modim. It says there that you do it, meaning you're in the middle of davening, and then you do an action. So how is this possible? If you're davening and you're not distracted and so on, you're just in, how is it the body can bow down and do something? So it says Yehuda has this innate ability, that's what it said he gets from Rachel, to express himself. Meaning that as much as it's thought, it does come out in expression. ולכן יצאו ממנו מלכי בית דוד שביטולם מבחינת הביטול שבהתגלות וחיצוניות. And that's why he gave birth to the house of David. And there are all these kings who show their nullification externally. They're able to. אבל לוי, שהוא בחינת התגרשות והביטול בפנימיותו, it's the inner aspect of ביטול, meaning that it's only between the person and himself. הגם שבחיצוניות אינו נגלה כלל. כי עניין ביטול לצבא השמיים לך משתחווים, משתחווה של מלאכים אינו עניין השתחווה גשמית, אלא שמשתחווה ובטל בהשגתו ברוחניות. So all their nullifications just in the mind. The example for that in the ancient world was that the stars continually revolve around the center point. So they describe this as why don't they fly off in a straight line? Normally things continue in a straight line. What keeps them going around in a circle? So the idea was that they're constantly nullifying themselves, meaning they would want to go off axially, like off the orbit. But there's something that's keeping them. Today we call that.
They're drawn to the center.
Okay, so today we call that centripetal force. Centripetal pushes you inwards, and they balance with the centrifugal. I think those are the two names. So anyway, there's actually a very big discussion in Chassidus when the Rebbe has a long discussion about what these two forces mean. But in the ancient world, this was considered to be their nullification. Centripetal force was like the nullification to the center. So all of this led to Levi giving birth to the Kohanim, whose bittul is not seen. You don't see it. Okay? You don't see it externally. As opposed to the kings, to David, to Yehuda, whose nullification before Hashem is seen external. You actually see it.
You can see a Kohen's chesed.
Chesed, but you can't see his bittul.
No, you can't see.
That's the idea.
Because he has all these fancy garments, you don't think that...
Garments, and not only that, but they also work very quickly. Externally, what you see is like people that are really in a hurry. Okay, they're very much in a hurry. You don't see the nullification, but inside, what they're saying is that in order to be so quick on the outside, you have to be very nullified on the inside. But a king is something else. His thing is to show it externally, and we said that he gets that, and he's able to speak it also. And so we said that he gets that from Rachel, really, his connection to expression. Then Leah stopped after Yehuda. Because that was the end of how much she could reveal at that point. So there's something about Yehuda, okay. To really understand this, we would have to see how the Arizal orders the children of Leah. Yehuda is in Bina, where he takes them from Keter, Chochmah, Bina, Da'at, and Chesed, and Gvura. Those are the 6. So he divides them according to that. If I remember correctly, Yehuda is in Bina. So when she got to Bina, when she got to Yehuda, it was the 4th from above, right? It's not the 4th from above, it's the 3rd from above. So the order is Zvulun, Yisachar, Yehuda, if I'm not mistaken. That's the order. It's like backwards, actually. Zvulun is the first, and Yisachar actually was the first, the last. So no, it's not even a reverse order. It's not a reverse order. What? Again, Shimon is Gvura, and Reuven is Chesed, and Levi is Dat. That's how the result puts it. Dat is also is kashrus, right? Dat, he says in the Tanya, is the connection between a husband and a wife. So in any case, so when she came to Yehuda, she stopped. Let's just see the end. So really, the rest is a long note. So okay, so maybe we'll leave the note for next time. So we'll learn the note tomorrow, or we'll just continue to the next one. What?
You want to write down this one?